Well, let's talk more about the anniversary of Chris Hani's assassination. We're joined tonight by SACP General Secretary Dr. Blade Nzimande. Dr. Nzimande, very good evening to you. Welcome to the program. So, 29 years on, you as the SACP and Chris Hani's family are still calling for full disclosure around his assassination. It's an annual call at this point. Do you think you'll ever be able to get that full disclosure?
Good evening, Tembegile, to you and the viewers and listeners. Thanks for inviting me. Absolutely. We will stand for the whole truth to come out surrounding the circumstances of the assassination of our late General Secretary. We hope that in the end, the truth will come out, because there are quite a number of things, by the way, both by the court that tried Waluś and Janusz, as well as the Truth and Reconciliation Commission. There were many things that were not answered. For instance, the firearm that killed our late General Secretary was stolen from the army. So it's not a very easy thing to do under apartheid. It was fitted with a silencer, and then it was tested, we understand, in a farm somewhere. Now, we don't know who all these people were involved in that process, because if we can know just that, we will then be able to know actually who else was involved. The other disturbing thing is that when Janusz was arrested and Clive Waluś, a list and addresses of a number of leaders of the ANC was actually found, amongst others found with the wife of the late Clive Waluś. In that list was Chris Hani, by the way. He was number 3. In that list also was Nelson Mandela. So you could see that there was actually a very big plan to derail democracy. That's why we say, if such things are never to happen in future, the whole truth must come up. That's why we are opposed to the release or to the parole of Janusz Waluś. We're saying, together with the Hani family, if Janusz Waluś can speak the truth, we will be the first one to actually support him to get out of prison tomorrow morning. But before he does that, we will actually never support that, because we can never build a country whilst there are still lies that are being told and the truth that hasn't come out. This poses a danger for the future of our country.
So on the Waluś issue, there has been fierce opposition to previous attempts and his possible release at the time, at multiple points at this point, his possible release on parole, right? And you say you are still in search of the full truth behind some of the circumstances around Chris Hani's assassination. Who then, 28 years into this country's democracy, would be standing between the SACP, the Hani family, and the truth? And what would they benefit by keeping the story hidden?
Well, we don't know, Tembegile. Let's be quite honest. We don't know who else was involved. We are only suspicious that there was a very elaborate plot, in the main involving the right wing in our country. It may not only have been them, but we don't know who else and how far the plot went. In fact, it's possible that the plot might have gone as far up as the actual apartheid regime itself at that time, because we know that the apartheid government hated Chris Hani, and their hatred for communists was largely also concentrated on hatred for Chris Hani. And that is why we are saying we want Janusz Waluś to help us, to tell us the truth. He's not going to be sentenced again. He's served his time. Also, at some stage, we're calling for an inquest. We haven't dropped that. But at the meantime, we're saying, if Janusz Waluś can be able to tell us the truth, we may not even have an inquest. Or if you have an inquest, it will know exactly where to actually start. That's why even today, by the way, we said, we can't build a country on the basis of a truth that has not emerged. That's why we said we welcome that at last the National Prosecuting Authority now has hired extra prosecutors in order to prosecute cases that the Truth and Reconciliation Commission 19 years ago had actually, more than 19 years actually, possibly, had actually recommended that those people must actually be prosecuted. So we still stand firm and we are hopeful If we knew, we would have taken the information to the authorities to say, here is what the situation is. There are pointers, but we don't know what the truth is.
So the commemoration of Chris Hani's life on this date also offers an opportunity for the SACP and other members of the tripartite alliance to reflect on what he stood for as a leader, but also contrast that to where the movement is today. Blade Nzimande, chairperson of the ANC, today speaking on behalf of government, said that ego, selfishness and arrogance are the main issues, essentially denying progress for the movement. Do you think that the alliance at this point can overcome those issues, given that they've become so entrenched?
We are very confident that we can overcome this, but the condition for doing that is what we're saying today. We need to admit the mistakes that we've made as a movement. We must reflect, for instance, on the outcomes of the 2021 local government election and say, what happened? But if we do not accept and reflect on those mistakes, we are actually going to undo the great legacy and sacrifices of people like Chris Hani. And Comrade Blade Nzimande is right. The issue of egos, leaders who liked Thembekile to be set around like we are sitting around a fire and be told how important they are. Part of the problem that we are facing is precisely that. People who are elevating their own individual interests and their big egos, that they are important leaders, that the country cannot move forward without them, or their municipalities or provinces where they are. It's part of the problem. But as the SACP, the single biggest problem that faces us is corruption. That's what we have to confront. That's why we're raising this issue that we have our conferences, the three formations, SACP in July, COSATU in September, and the ANC in December. We have to actually use those conferences, not to further divide ourselves, but to then say, how do we deal with this problem of money in the organization? Delegates are bought today. People plan to be elected into the organization to take it over so that they can go and control municipal budgets, or in some instances part of provincial budgets with links nationally in order to distribute patronage and enrich themselves. That stands directly in opposite of what someone like Chris Hani stood for. We have to
Dr. Nzimande, just on that point, it also is an issue, isn't it, for the alliance that the alliance has never had an issue diagnosing the problem. In fact, some say there's a crisis of over-deliberation, over-diagnosis, but terrible efforts as far as remedying the situation. Why aren't we seeing as much of an effort to actually address the issue successfully? Because we hear this all the time.
Well, there has been an effort. It's not enough, Thembekile. We can't say that there is actually no effort. The fact that, for instance, all of us, we are committed to the renewal of the ANC and also of our alliance formations, and that we have identified that corruption is a big issue. The ANC has set a tone by actually having this step-aside rule to begin to say, if you are charged, you must step aside. But we need to do much more and be bold and be able to confront these issues of money. Because even factionalism, it's not because of ideological differences. It's to who controls the organization in order to control which resources and patronage. We still need to do more. We think that we are on the right path, but we are not moving fast enough.
All right.
That's why we're saying as the SACP, let's use these coming 3 congresses to take very decisive and bold action and to say, thieves, factionalists, those who divide us, they are not needed in our own organization. We need to be as bold as that in order to be able to confront. And those that have been found with their hands in the cookie jar, they must be arrested and charged and be sent to jail, irrespective of who they are. That is the only thing that will really then begin to actually strike fear amongst those who have now thought that they must turn our organizations that have made so much sacrifices. When you think about Comrade Chris Hani, how he was brutally murdered to try and prevent us from having this democratic South Africa. Yet we are here now, but there are people who are actually using our organizations in order to be able to advance themselves. And their egos, as Comrade Gwede was saying, leaders who want to be visited every weekend to be told how important they are, all those things are the things that are actually taking us back.
Dr. Nzimande, two quick final questions, and I'll give them to you at once. First, I'd like to get the SACP's take on how the country should be dealing with a situation such as what's developing in Deep Slit. We've seen in the last, 7 days or so, protests, people saying they're fed up with rampant crime, a collapse of policing essentially, and illegal immigration, which they say is out of control. And then the second, the issue of the Russian invasion of Ukraine. I know you've spoken out against NATO on that score, but I want to ask you about the two phone calls that President Ramaphosa has had. The first was with Vladimir Putin of Russia. In the last few days, he spoke to the US President Joe Biden. If South Africa were to stick with a position, which of those two countries should we back, should we stick with?
Maybe if I start with the latter on the conflict in Ukraine, the SACP supports the stance of government. We are against war, and there must be peace. Peace, by the way, Tembegile, not only in Ukraine. We need peace in Palestine. We need peace in Yemen. We need peace in Iraq. We need peace in Libya. This is an opportunity to say the entire world must be peaceful. It can't be that the blood of certain people in parts of the regions of the world is more important than the children in Yemen, for instance, or the women in Syria who are being killed. So we support government. Let there be negotiations. From our own experience, it is possible that we can have negotiations and bring an end to the war. We are still firm that the primary cause of this, of course, is NATO's expansion outwards, going against agreements that were made even at the time of the Soviet Union. On the matter of deep swap, it's very unfortunate that the situation is developing. We are pleading with our people to say, do not take the law onto your own hands. But at the same time, we have to deal with the issue of undocumented migrants and also to confront the employers in particular who are increasingly employing undocumented migrants so that they maximally exploit them, sideline the employment of South Africans. It's very important that we sit on the employers and also that our immigration laws are tightened such that we do not have just this open thing of undocumented migrants. But we are saying to our people, don't take the law into your own hands. Let things be done legally. Let the police deal with the problems. And crime must be dealt with uncompromisingly, irrespective of whoever is involved.
We're out of time, Dr. Nzimande, but which is South Africa's most important ally between Russia and the United States, according to the SACP?
Well, South Africa as government interacts with both countries. We as the SACP on our side, the fact that we are criticizing the US and NATO, it does not mean that we are supporters of Putin and that capitalist government in Russia, which is dominated by the oligarchs. Our stance is simple. What we support is the protection of ordinary people from the ravages of war. We support peace as the South African Communist Party. So do we believe the South African government also support peace.
Dr. Blade Nzimande, let's leave it there. Blade Nzimande is leader of the SA Communist Party.